Released in 2002, Gungrave was developed by Red Entertainment and created by Yasuhiro Nightow, who also created Trigun, whose manga and anime style shows loads in this game. Getting fairly average reviews at the time it released, the game would get an anime in 2003, a sequel in 2004, and 14 years down the line it would get a VR game in 2018, and later on a new installment in 2022 named Gungrave Gore. In Gungrave, you play as an undead man named Grave who wants to take down the Syndicate, a crime group ruling the city, and their new leader, the man who killed him, Harry McDowell. The game starts with a girl entering a room with a box that contains something. She falls down and a man in the room opens it and picks up 2 guns from it. He takes the guns and his coffin and he leaves the room. The girl, Mika, wakes up and says her mother told her to get the guns to Grave. The other man there, Dr. T, says that Grave has the guns now. The game's a third-person shooter where your main weapons are 2 pistols and a coffin that doubles as both a meaty melee weapon and can also be used for special moves. Unlike other third-person shooters though, the game doesn't really have you aiming or hiding in cover. Instead, you're mainly focused on standing your ground and firing away. Your fast regenerating shield also meaning you can take a fair few hits before you start to take damage to your actual health. You can still move and shoot, but while doing so, you are pretty slow, and you can't sprint while shooting. The guns are shot by repeatedly tapping square, so for the majority of the game that's pretty much what you'll be doing. While shooting, you can either dodge in 4 directions with X, jump by just pressing X while stationary, or stand still and enter this stance where you stylishly move around, dodging enemy shots and firing away. With R1 you can swing the coffin, both knocking enemies back and damaging them. You can also lock onto enemies with L1, which I personally didn't find to be very consistent though. And with L2 you can perform a quick 180 degree turn, which can really help with some places where the camera just doesn't work too great. The last part of the main combat is the demolition shot, which is performed by pressing triangle. There are 4 of these, but basically only 2, as the 2 later ones are basically just upgraded versions of the previous abilities. These are Death Blow, a rocket launcher, Bullet Dance, a move where you spin in the circle and spray bullets everywhere, Hellhound Roar, the same as the first but with 3 rockets instead, and Raging Inferno, which is the same as the second but this time you jump and spray more bullets. These moves can only be used when the ammo is filled up on the meter in the top left. The meter fills the more you fight, and the more stylish you fight, the faster it fills. Once it's full you get 1 ammo that can be used on one of the 4 moves I mentioned previously, or to heal some health. You can stack ammo though, so there's no rush to use it when in smaller fights. The camera can be pretty awkward at times, because of how it moves with Grave on the left stick instead of just being mapped to the right one. However, there's only really a few occurrences of this actually messing me up, mainly in the sewers really. Although the combat is fairly basic when compared to other games of its era, it's still enjoyable and pretty fun when you unleash loads of demolition attacks, or just gun down enemies. I also like running up to people and going the melee route instead. There's something oddly therapeutic about watching them fly. Although I do prefer melee combat to ranged, what we have in this game is pretty solid, and the short runtime of only about 2 hours also helps keep the game's combat from getting stale. The level design is mainly just corridors, which isn't really a problem because it lends itself to the combat, but in the instances when the level design does go narrow like in the sewers, it can be very annoying. The areas themselves look great though. Places like Chinatown look really nice mainly thanks to this game's art style. While I do love the PS2 aesthetic, I would be lying if I said the games that went for a more realistic style held up today. In some cases, games like Silent Hill 2 and Resident Evil 4 excel partly because of the graphics being low quality, enhancing the horror, but that's the only case I can really think of the graphics working, so it's a good thing that the game went for this really neat and awesome anime cel shaded style. The cutscenes look great with how kind of stiff the characters move, and the art style overall being very appealing. The way Grave slowly moves around in the cutscenes also fits his character, being an undead basically walking corpse. The way he dances around shooting is also clean as hell. The UI is also really nice. The menu has this brown and grey mechanical look, and the sound effect match that. The same goes for the main hub where you speak to Mika, Grave's adopted daughter and the biological daughter of Big Daddy. Dr. T, the man that resurrected Grave into a dead man. Or select your mission. The UI is the same look to it, with this peaceful music making it a nice break from the action. And the music in this game is also amazing. It's upbeat and hyping. It really gets you in the mood to shoot some bullets and do it in style. My favourites being an ulterior motive and Tough Cookie. The music being so prevalent in all the stages makes it very noticeable when there is none near the end of the game, when you're on top of the buildings above the clouds. It adds to the sense of height of the place. While the game's story is mainly only used to progress the game forward, the main bit of actual story we get is near the end of the game. Before the final area, you take an elevator up, and in the elevator we learn about Grave's past. His original name was Brandon, who used to be a part of the Syndicate. The world of Gungrave is a cruel and unforgiving one, and the leader of the Syndicate, Big Daddy, wanted to make the world a more peaceful place for his daughter, who was yet to be born, and gives the task of helping his reality come true to you. Later on in an elevator, Harry proposes a plan to kill the boss, and he's got something so powerful that with it they'll be able to control the entire city. Brandon isn't on board with this plan and instead decides to hook that fool to show his disapproval. In retaliation to this, and to avoid letting the plan get leaked, Harry decides to dump a full mag into him, finishing him off with a shot to the head, sending him flying out the elevator down to the streets. When you exit the elevator, you enter the area I mentioned previously, and it's far more outlandish, if that's the right word, than the other areas. Until now, the areas have been fairly realistic, mainly being streets and buildings. However, this new location is far more supernatural in a way, being this place far above the clouds with these stairs that appear and disappear. The enemies throughout the game have had unrealistic tendencies, like with the bosses. But here, all the enemies come out of these egg things, the enemies themselves being these blue creatures. And at the end of this stage, we find Harry and confront him, where the final boss is actually their old boss, who Harry turned into this blue monster. After defeating it, we get to kill Harry. Not in a boss fight, but in one clean shot in a cutscene. Or one long shot if you're me and didn't realise you had to press square, so sat there for about 50 seconds waiting for something to happen. Overall, although the story wasn't much, it's still pretty good. It doesn't explain too much and leaves a fair bit about the past of these characters and the world to interpretation, which I think gets explained more about in the anime, but I haven't watched it. The cutscenes are kind of weirdly placed though. Like this one example where Dr. T gets gunned down and Mika gets kidnapped. It's oddly fast. Basically, Grave goes into this room to get a blood transfusion to keep him alive, and while he's in there, someone knocks at the door then shoots through it. After Dr. T falls to the floor and Mika gets taken, he tells Grave to go after her, and we just kind of spawn in a mission chasing down Mika. It all feels kind of awkward. It could have done with some bit more time, if you get what I mean. There's no real tension building with the knock on the door and then the shooting. It just kind of like, Graves getting a blood transfusion, there's someone at the door, bang, Mr. T's knocked down, oh no, Mika's gone. It doesn't really leave a lot of room to be sad about Dr. T's death, as I'm pretty sure we don't even see Grave acknowledge it. It's not that big of a deal, but it is definitely a noticeable nitpick. Another example of the cutscenes being weird is this one scene when you catch up to the person that kidnaps Mika, and he throws her out the window, and she gets hit by a train, so I assume she died, but after the boss, she's just okay and back in the hub, not even like damage or anything. So yeah, overall it was a pretty good game and I enjoyed my time with it. I will most likely do a video on the other two in the future. But yeah, thanks for watching, and if you stick around I'll see you in the next one. So for now, this is goodbye.